Hi there guys, and welcome to another episode of the Cover Zero Show with me, your host, Simon Conboy. Moving on to one of my new series this week. It's the Quarterback Quandary series, where I'll be going through each team that's got a question mark at that position. Some of these will be more obvious than others, and it's not going to be a daily thing. There will be daily videos, but this is the first in this series. I'm looking to try and get these all done by draft time, when of course the situation could well change. So I'll just be breaking down the current options or option at the positions, offering potential solutions, as well as discussing, in some cases, the play of the player. Now, in this case, that will be particularly relevant. I will be discussing Buffalo Bills quarterback Tyrod Taylor. So, just a bit of context on the player. Was initially drafted by the Ravens, spent 4 years there as a backup to Joe Flacco, and has spent the last 2 years in Buffalo as the starter. Statistically, looks pretty good. 15 wins, 14 losses. Obviously, that's not great, but by no means a disaster. He's thrown 37 touchdowns in that time, combined with 11 rushing touchdowns. That's not bad, especially considering how run-heavy the offense has been. And when you factor in he's only thrown 12 interceptions in that time, it's been very efficient in terms of making some plays whilst also not jeopardising the team with back-breaking mistakes like interceptions. Completion percentages have been middling, 63.7, down 2 points last season, 61.7. Not great, but also not horrific. Right in the middle of the park kind of region there. As well as that, over 500 yards rushing each year, so he's a threat in that respect, and just over 3,000 yards passing both seasons, which I don't think is particularly impressive. I think you want to be closer to the 4,000 yard mark in today's NFL. But in terms of his attributes as a quarterback, he's got a good arm. There's no question there. He's elusive in the pocket, is a legitimate threat running the football, and can throw with touch. And when his mechanics are good, he's a very accurate thrower of the ball. So, based on the fact he's only been starting 2 years, why are there question marks, I suppose? Well, I think it's when you watch the tape, it's not like watching most NFL quarterbacks. It's certainly a very different evaluation. He, of course, runs about a lot. You get a lot of broken plays. One of the things that I see a lot of on tape, as soon as there's a free rusher or he feels some pressure, he just breaks the pocket, immediately enters scramble drill mode. Doesn't turn the ball much over in those situations, which is, a plus. But he also, I think if you want a comparison, look at Russell Wilson, who has great pocket movement, will stick in the pocket, go through his reads, find check downs, and make solid decisions there. Tyrod Taylor will try to keep plays alive, and I'm not sure he will go through a play's progressions as needed. For if he's trying to throw something deep, for example, and there's a check down, he doesn't go to the check down before trying to escape, or just sort of slide in the pocket and then make that check down. He will just break the play and ad-lib from that point on. I think that can be difficult, for the rest of the offense. Of course, it can be difficult to defend, but it's something that's very difficult to account for. On top of that, one of the most bizarre things watching it is how little he throws over the middle of the field. Now, one of the things that I'm pretty sure that this is what I see on tape is someone who doesn't necessarily know how to read a defense to the level you would expect of a starting NFL quarterback. Whether it's just not knowing how to read it pre-snap, if it's teams have figured out that they can disguise coverages and confuse him, that's something that only really the player will know. I sometimes also wonder whether he understands some of the offensive concepts and how they relate to certain defensive schemes, because you really only sort of see him attempt certain types of passes now. He's very happy throwing his seam route. I think he's one of the best deep ball throwers in the league, through some beauties over the last 2 seasons, deep to Goodwin and Watkins and co. But it's bizarre seeing a player who throws so little over the middle. Now, I think that's one of the reasons why there's so few picks. Of course, the middle of the field generally the most congested part and the most risky if your throw is slightly off or there's a greater risk of it being tipped and leading to those turnovers. However, it's a necessary part of the offense. The sideline, as they always say, defenders like to treat the sideline as another defender. Relying on throws outside the hashes is not the most efficient way to quarterback a team. I mean, you just don't see too many in routes across the middle. You don't see too many slants from him. It's a lot of curls, a lot of goes, a lot of outs, and I think it makes it's a lot easier to defend. Now, I'm not sure, I don't believe there's much statistical correlation between sort of using all of the field, but I do believe you have to demonstrate a willingness to do so. It's not about clearly demonstrating in a game plan, we're going to use all of the field, but there has to be a willingness on tape to do so, and I don't think we've seen that with Tyrod Taylor, and I think that limits the offense. I think it allows defenses to do more in terms of disguising coverage and using zone blitzes, which I think are some of the plays that he has struggled with. So I think that's an adjustment he needs to make. Now, of course, how much of this is scheme, it's difficult to say, particularly when Rex Ryan's the coordinator. Of course, he doesn't want to throw the ball as much. They were a very run-heavy team, which was fair because they were very successful doing so. But he doesn't want to throw the ball as much. I've got no doubt he was probably emphasising not turning the ball over. So some of it probably does stem from that. But in conjunction with this, I mean, there's just certain things that you see. His footwork, when it's on point, is great. He can be a very accurate passer, but because once there's pressure, I don't think he deals with pressure fantastically. As I say, breaks the pocket, and his mechanics can be a little off when he does so. Due to these tendencies, the offense can be incredibly streaky. There were a lot of games last season in particular, I think, where teams had a solid game plan and sort of figured out how they would attack Taylor. It was successful, and the passing game as a result was incredibly poor, not productive at all. In some of those games, the stats were inflated because he was a very successful deep ball passer, and you'd have some games around like 200 yards where the vast majority of that came on two big completions, whether it's heaving one up to Sammy Watkins or Goodwin, or a little dump off to a running back that went 30-40 yards. Really skewed the statistics, I think, and was quite misleading. He was very inefficient when you watch him playing the position. Now, whilst I think he's a good thrower outside numbers, I do feel we need to see some adjustment made there. What I want to see from him is the ability to make his reads and progress through them, rather than looking to break the pocket. I want to see him see pass rushers, step up in the pocket, slide away from a rusher, keep his eyes downfield. These are things that he absolutely has to do. And again, use Russell Wilson as an example as sort of the other premier rushing or running dual threat quarterback in the league. These are things that he does very well, and I think Tyrod Taylor's got to add them to his game. I believe this is the reason why the team has been having issues with whether to commit to Tyrod Taylor over the course in the next few years. Now, of course, the contract number for next year was going to be absurd. I can understand the question marks they had there, but this progression does need to be shown. Now, bear in mind, he has only started 2 seasons. We could see improvement there. It has to happen. Now, I personally believe this player has, in terms of the physical skill set, there's no question marks for me there. He's got an above average arm, can throw with accuracy, and can certainly run. I don't see anticipatory throws on film. Now, I think one of the difficulties in evaluating that is their only real high-end receiving talent is Sammy Watkins, and of course he's missed a large amount of games and isn't a particularly experienced player himself. So I don't know how much trust there is between him and the receiving group. Of course, him not being a particularly experienced starter himself either. But the offense looks incredibly conservative with him throwing. Now, as much as he threw the ball deep and was successful doing so, it tended to be throwing to guys that were clearly open rather than throwing guys open, or knowing when there was going to be a window, anticipating it and throwing the ball into that space. These are things you absolutely have to be able to do to be a top tier NFL quarterback. The anticipation aspect is 100% vital, and I just do not see it from Taylor at this point in time. Now, I expect to see some significant changes to this offense. I think it will look a bit more like a standard NFL passing game. I think Rex's approach is, if it's working, keep going. But I just want to see him start to develop into the pocket passer that I think he could well be. Now, whether it's an issue, as I say, with his understanding of defences in this league, I'm not sure, or whether he's been specifically coached not to make mistakes. If you don't see it, don't throw it. Again, I don't know, but those are certainly traits that you're seeing on film. It looks very easy to scheme and defend against, and I think we saw last season teams really did figure out how to attack this passing game effectively. It went through some barren spells. Whether this is on Tyrod Taylor, I'm not sure, but to me, that's why there's question marks within the franchise. I don't know if they believe at this point that he can run the offense from the line of scrimmage. I don't know if they trust that their receivers will be able to develop fully. And bear in mind, they gave up a lot to go get Sammy Watkins. If they'll be able to develop around him and reach their maximum potential. And I think that's where the issue lies with this franchise. Now, Taylor, I personally think he's the best option they have. If you look at this year's draft, of course, they may have a shot at getting Deshaun Watson or Trubisky. It's really, it's hard to predict at this point because it's not considered a great class who might be available for them. I get the impression this franchise wants to win now at this point. They seem to believe the roster is there in place. Taylor's going into next season in particular. Taylor is definitely a better option. Now, long term, I'm not sure. I'd really want to see development from him next year. If I don't see it, to be honest, at this point, at this point next year, if I don't see it, then I would be happy to say, that this is who he is. A gifted quarterback who struggles with reading the field, going through progressions, and dealing with pressure. That you'd have 3 years of that on tape with little progression. I think you'd be able to say that's who he is. You can't, plan on him being the face of your franchise as at the quarterback spot. If you do see that progression, I think you can stick with him. Bear in mind, only 2 years as a starter, and I think if we were looking at a rookie, now of course we can't necessarily do that, and it might be a fool's errand to do so. But if he were, people would be like, wow, that's two great seasons so far. So that progression has to happen. If so, I think the team will be more than happy to move forward with him. But I want to see him, banking some calls from the line of scrimmage. I want to see some throws in at the middle of the field. I want to see anticipation. I want to see pocket movement and awareness. Because the tools are definitely there. I 100% believe that with Tyrod Taylor. It's just, at the minute, this doesn't look like an NFL, well, it hasn't over the last 2 years looked like an NFL offense that he's running. I think teams sussed it out in terms of the passing game. The run game was still very effective, but I think they sussed out the pass game, and if it continues like that, then he is not going to be with the Buffalo Bills for much longer. It's a real problem because I don't think there's a better option there. They could maybe go get Jay Cutler. I don't. Of course, it doesn't look like that's going to happen at this point. Who knows what's going on with Cutler? I think that would be a terrible idea. I think the key here for this franchise, and it looks like it's what they're doing, they're going to roll with him for another year, see what happens. It is a quandary. It's a tough spot that they're in. But roll the dice with Tyrod for one more year is definitely the way to go. If they feel very strongly about one of these rookies, fair enough. I think still see what Tyrod's got. You never know what may happen down the line. But I do believe, if he can grasp the mental aspect of the game, get well coached in that side of things, we could be looking at a very, very good NFL player here. So the Bills don't have the worst of the problems here. It's certainly the most interesting of them. So yeah, that's my perspective on Mr. Taylor. like watching him play though. Certainly fun, even if it is does hurt my brain at times. So some of the decision making in terms of just breaking the pocket and running around. But yeah, certainly has shown me enough to think he's worth investing at least another year in, and we'll see what happens there. I think we didn't see any progression going into year 2. I think that's where a lot of these issues have arisen. In terms of last year, if anything, it kind of went backwards in some ways. As I say, I think teams figured it out. So what do you guys think of Tyrod Taylor? Do you think he's the answer in Buffalo? If you're one of the teams in need of a quarterback, how would you feel if you were in that position, if Tyrod was brought in to be the starting quarterback of your franchise? Do you disagree with anything that I've stated today? Buffalo fans, you've probably watched the games in more... Well, I don't know if you'd have watched them in more of the games than me. But, you're more invested in this. You're probably... Some of you in particular will be watching more of the Buffalo games than me, analysing them with a bit more focus and detail. If you got anything you want to discuss, do so below in the comments section. The Cover Zero Facebook, find me on Twitter. I'll be more than happy to respond. I've got some interesting episodes coming up this week. I hope you check them out. Check out some of the previous stuff. I think last week's series in particular, the franchise and draft review series, was very, very good. A lot of work and research went into that, and I think it came out well. Thank you very much for listening. Really appreciate it. To those of you who've subscribed at this point, thank you so much for that. Greatly appreciated. If you've enjoyed the show, check out some more. Don't forget, if you can like, share, subscribe, check out the Patreon. They'll all also be thoroughly appreciated. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for your time, and go Bucks.